Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're here today because honestly, we've got a truly incredible story to dive into. It's called The Physician of the Last Letter. We're going to unpack the amazing journey of a young girl, look at the massive hurdles she faced, and see exactly how she took her deepest heartbreak and turned it into an absolute gift for the world. So get comfortable and let's jump right in.
But before we get into the details, I've got to ask all of you watching a question. Have you ever wondered how sadness could actually become a superpower? I know, it sounds kind of weird, right? Usually when we're sad or going through a tough time, we just feel weak or small or totally defeated. When we think of superpowers, we usually think of flying or super strength. But as we're going to see today, the ultimate superpower actually comes right from inside our own hearts. So keep your own tough days in mind as we dive into this.
All right, part one, Guria and her grandmother and a life of poverty.
So, to really grasp how amazing Guria's eventual success is, we first have to look at where her life started. According to our story, Guria was just 10 years old. She was an orphan, meaning she'd lost her parents, and she lived in a small village with her elderly grandmother. Now, the text makes it very clear they lived in deep, severe poverty. And we're not just talking about not having toys or the newest clothes. No, they were so poor that a lot of the time both Guria and her grandma had to go to sleep with completely empty stomachs, simply because they had absolutely no food. Just imagine for a second how incredibly hard that daily struggle must have been for a 10-year-old kid.
Which brings us to part two, a night of sorrow and a desperate cry for help.
Things took a really dark turn when her grandmother got terribly sick. Guria desperately wanted to call a doctor, but remember that poverty we just talked about? She didn't have a single penny. So she went out and pleaded for help. But, and this is the heartbreaking part, the villagers just completely ignored her. They showed total indifference. No one stepped up. In that moment, little Guria was completely isolated. She was surrounded by people, but totally alone in her fight to save the only family she had left. Later that night, knowing how terrified Guria was, and knowing how the village had just turned their backs on them, her grandmother held her hand and gave her this incredible advice. She said, "My child, always be a good person, no matter how the world treats you." I mean, think about how powerful that is. The world had just been incredibly unfair to them. It would have been so easy for her grandma to be angry or to tell Guria to be bitter towards the villagers. But instead, she taught her to protect her own goodness. She taught her that your character shouldn't change just because other people are acting badly. Moving into part three, the last letter and a hidden message. When morning finally came, Guria woke up to the greatest tragedy of her young life. Her grandmother had passed away during the night. Guria was now entirely on her own in the world. But her grandmother had left something behind. Tucked quietly right under her pillow was a small piece of paper, a letter. It was almost like this magical talisman she left behind to protect Guria in the really dark days ahead.
Let's read the exact words of that letter together. It said, "My sweet Guria, if I am no longer here, never give up. Your smile is my greatest wealth. One day you will surely succeed." The story tells us that Guria held this letter tightly to her chest and just cried. But look closely at the words her grandmother chose. Never give up. You will surely succeed. Even after she was gone, her grandmother was still her ultimate cheerleader, planting this deep seed of absolute belief in Guria's mind. And that tiny piece of paper, it became the map for the rest of her life.
Now let's jump to part four and see how this builds into something incredible. A dream comes true through years of hard work. Because look, success isn't just magic, right? It's a journey. Guria started as a 10-year-old orphan with literally no money and no family, holding nothing but a letter. Then years went by, years of intense, hard studying. And you know that whenever she felt tired or hungry or just wanted to throw in the towel, she undoubtedly thought of that letter and her grandmother's belief in her. And all that sheer determination led to something absolutely amazing. Guria conquered her poverty and became a doctor. She completely refused to let her circumstances define her future, and instead, she wrote a brand new story for herself through education and perseverance.
Which brings us to the final chapter, part 5, the power of compassion and giving back.
You see, Guria's success wasn't just about getting a fancy job for herself. It was all about how she used it. She became a doctor, yes, but she didn't pack up and move to some big city to get rich. Nope. Instead, she went right back to her village, the exact same village that had ignored her when she needed the most, and she opened a free hospital. Why? Because she wanted to make absolutely sure that no other child would ever have to lose someone they loved just because they couldn't afford to pay a doctor. She looked at the absolute worst thing that ever happened to her, and she basically built a massive shield so it would never happen to anyone else.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? First off, sorrow does not have to break us. We are all going to go through hard times, but those hard times don't mean we're broken. And second, our pain can actually give us the strength to become a huge support for other people. Gudia's pain gave her a really deep understanding of what it feels like to be totally helpless, and she used that empathy to become a literal superhero for her community. She took her sadness and turned it into her superpower.
Which leaves us with one final question for all of you watching right now. How can you use your own difficult moments to help someone else today? Maybe you know exactly what it feels like to be left out of a game at recess, so you make a point to invite the new kid to play. Or maybe you really struggled with a math problem, so you decide to help a friend who's stuck on it right now. Whatever it is, remember Gudia's story. Remember that letter. You have the power to take your hardest days and use them to light up the world for someone else. Thank you so much for joining me for this amazing explainer today. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.